Raising Quality Queens by John Zawalask and David Burns. The queen honeybee is fundamental to the colony's survival and function. She is the only member of the hive capable of producing more female offspring to keep the colony going. The chemical pheromones produced by a queen bee impart a unique identity to each colony and its members. The presence of these pheromones also keeps the colony cohesive and orderly. A queen is the respiratory of a colony's heritable genetic traits. These genetics influence many aspects of colony behaviours, such as their defensiveness, parasite tolerance and disease resistance, rate of population growth, and the efficiency of winter food consumption. The importance of quality queen bee cannot be overemphasized. A colony of bees with undesirable traits can be remedied by requeening. Within 6 weeks of replacing a queen, most of the worker bees are replaced by the new queen's offspring, and notable changes in temperament and behaviour will be evident. Beekeepers choose to raise queens for many reasons. They can stock their own hives when queens die out or need replacing. They can save money by raising their own queens. By doing so, beekeepers can have queens available when needed without the expense or delay of having queens shipped from another producer. Surplus queens can be sold to others in the area who need them, bringing extra income to the beekeeper. Every beekeeper can maintain one or more small nukes with a few frames holding a laying queen, just in case one is needed. By selectively raising their own queens, beekeepers can take control of the characteristics they desire in their own bee stocks. Bee colonies raise queens naturally. Inducing a colony to rear queens merely encourages this natural phenomenon, subject to the beekeeper's conditions and schedule. While not difficult or time-consuming, the particular steps in rearing queens must be done on a schedule that matches the natural development cycle of honeybee queens. Table 1. Queen rearing cannot be sped up or slowed down for the convenience of the beekeeper. If the schedule is not observed, poor quality queens may result. Or the beekeeper may find that a single early emerging queen has destroyed several weeks of effort. Once the basic elements of the queen rearing process are understood, basically any beekeeper can raise surplus queens. Many techniques have been developed in raising queens, and the process can be individualized to overcome any challenges. While basic knowledge of honeybee biology is fundamental, advanced beekeeping experience is not necessary. However, as with most activities, knowledge and experience make queen rearing easier and more enjoyable. Selective breeding for better queens. As beekeepers can produce new queens and must do it accidentally, but queen breeder produces new queens with the goal of maintaining and improving high quality stock. Many honeybee behaviours are influenced by heritable genetic traits as the mother of the entire colony. The qualities of a particular queen are expressed in every one of her offspring. These traits can have profound effects on the behaviour and health of the whole colony. The temperament. The reaction of a colony when it is approached, opened or otherwise disturbed can be a genetic trait. Africanized bees are particularly known for their extremely defensive behaviour. Gentle strains are especially important when keeping bees in urban settings. Mite tolerances. Parasitic mites are among the greatest problem for beekeepers. The effectiveness of current mite treatment is limited, and their use has had other detrimental effects on the colony health. Breeding bees which are able to remove or resist parasites without the assistance of the beekeeper is an important step for improving the health of the beekeeping industry. Disease resistance. Bees that exhibit hygiene behaviours are able to detect and remove disease brood at a very early stage of infection. The behaviour greatly reduces the chance of an entire colony will become infected with a contagious pathogen. Colony population growth. Some colonies will adjust their brood rearing to seasonal condition. They may increase in size prior to a nectar flow, ensuring more foragers to collect nectar. They may also reduce their population during times of summer dearth or approaching winter, which allows them to use stored food more efficiently. Other colonies maintain a large population and brood area despite conditions. Honey production. Some colonies of bees will be better producers of honey than in the same apiary. Honey production is dependent on outside conditions as well as colony population, brood production, and overall colony health. Typically, strong, healthy colonies are better producers of honey, and therefore good honey production often indicates good overall colony health as the beekeeper works to improve other traits that support colony health. Honey production should also increase. A bee breeder should take care to select only colonies with the most desirable characteristics from which to propagate new queens. There is no perfect bee for all situations or conditions. Rarely will any single colony possess all the most desirable characteristics, but over successive generations, a beekeeper should continue to select for preferred traits. When selecting the breeding stock, beekeepers must consider their own criteria regarding area characteristics are more desirable. Beekeepers can select one or more high-quality hives in their own apiary to use as breeder stock, or purchase breeder queens from other sources. Commercial breeder queens may be instrumentally inseminated from selected drone lines to produce offspring with consistent traits. These queens may cost several $100s each and are genetically used only to propagate more queens, which are then open-mated with local drones. When selecting the healthy disease and mite-resistant queen lines, beekeepers are encouraged to breed from survivor stock. These are colonies that have not been treated with chemical pesticides, but naturally possess traits that allow them to overwinter successfully on their own and remain productive. Regularly treating colonies with pesticides to get rid of mites only breeds stronger mites. At the same time, it promotes the survival of bees that cannot cope with their natural enemies. Breeding bees that are able to combat mites by themselves is ultimately the best solution for the beekeeping industry. Biology of bee breeding. Honeybee colonies consist of 3 specialized types of bees. Each member has its own fundamental role to play in the production of new queens. When rearing queen bees, beekeepers will rely on all 3 of these types of bees to carry out their particular tasks. The drone is the male bee, whose essential job is to mate with the virgin queen outside of the hive. When this task is complete, he will die immediately. Drones add little value to a colony beyond this role, but in terms of rearing productive queens, their contribution is crucial. The workers make up the majority of the hive and are the backbone of the colony's survival and daily activity. They construct combs, feed and care for all the brood and the queen, clean and guard the hive, regulate the nest temperature, forages for all the hive's needed resources, nectar, pollen, water and propolis, and store surplus food to ensure the colony's future. The queen bee is the key to the continuation of the colony. She is the sole repository of the colony's genes, her own and those of the drones which she has mated. A queen honeybee stores the millions of spermatozoa from multiple drones in a special organ within her abdomen called the spermatheca. These sperm remain alive and viable for several years, allowing her to fertilize eggs as a deposit. A healthy queen is capable of laying 1,000 to 3,000 eggs per day. In addition to eggs, she constantly produces chemical pheromones that regulate hive behaviors. Her attendant workers, known as her court or retinue, feed and groom her throughout the day, so that she can focus her attention on egg production to maintain the colony's population. Through their association with their queen and their interactions with other workers, these attendants distribute their pheromone throughout the hive. While a healthy queen bee can live for several years, most workers live for little more than a month during the warm foraging season. Therefore, a colony of honeybees must have a laying queen, or their population will dwindle within a few weeks. A colony perpetually monitors the performance of its queen. If she is killed or removed, they will quickly try to raise another queen from a suitable larva. If the queen begins to perform poorly, perhaps laying only unfertilised drone eggs, then she will be superseded by a new queen. A colony will also rear multiple queens larvae when they become overcrowded and are preparing to swarm. The old queen will leave with one half of the colony's workers just prior to the new virgin queen emerging from her cell. New queens are reared from young female bee larvae. There is no fundamental difference in any female bee larvae when they are small. Each has the potential to become either a worker or a new queen. All young bees are initially fed a rich diet of nutritious jelly by the workers around the third day of their larval stage. Most larvae are changed to a diet called bee bread, a mixture of pollen and honey. When the larvae are switched to this diet, they develop into worker bees. Drones are also fed this mixed diet, but they will also always be drones. If a female larva is continuously fed a diet of raw jelly throughout its larval stage, however, it will develop into a queen bee. Once sealed drone cells are apparent in the hive, a beekeeper can begin rearing queen bees. Drones are sexually mature after 14 days, therefore a sufficient number of mature drones should be available by the time newly produced queens are ready to mate. Queens can be reared into the fall as long as drones are still present in the hives. Once drones have been expelled from the hive for winter, queen rearing should not be attempted unless colonies will not expel drones, but sufficient drones for good mating will be extremely limited in the fall. Beekeepers should ensure that all hives in their operation are well supplied with both pollen and honey, or a protein patty and syrup during times of dearth and drought. Small colonies such as mating nukes can quickly run short of food if their bee populations are minimal. In order to make hives produce new queens, beekeepers must try to mimic the conditions under which honeybees naturally begin raising their own queens. The best queens are raised by hives that are currently queenless, contain many young bees capable of producing raw jelly and beeswax, and have a surplus of pollen and honey stored in the hive. The beekeeper creates these conditions in the starter hive. The starter hive. The easiest way to create the essential conditions for raising queens is to prepare a starter hive. An ordinary 5-frame nuke works very well as a starter cell. Prepare the starter colony several hours before introducing the larvae that will be reared as queens. A minimum of 2 hours is necessary for the bees in their starter colony to observe that they are queenless, due to the sufficient drop in level of queen pheromone in their bodies. Do not prepare more than 24 hours ahead of time. A well-prepared starter hive is among the most important factors in rearing high-quality queens. The hive should be very crowded, with mostly young, healthy, well-fed workers, with nurse bees which produce the most royal jelly, for the queen grafts are between 8 and 12 days old. They are usually found on combs of open brood. One of the frames in the starter hive is the cell bar frame, which holds larvae that the beekeeper has selected to be reared as queens. 2 frames in this starter hive should be full of honey or nectar. At least 1 frame should contain a large amount of pollen or bee bread. This food is important for the young bees that will populate this hive. They will need ample protein to produce the necessary large amounts of raw jelly that the queen larvae require. The honey will be used for energy and to secrete the wax that they will use to build the queen cells. These frames can all be taken from a single hive or gathered from several hives. The final frame can contain additional food and can be an empty drawn comb, arrange the combs as in the diagram figure 1. No combs in the starter hive should contain eggs or open brood. If any eggs or young larvae are present, the bees may try to rear them as queens, rather than the larvae selected by the beekeeper. Older larvae cannot be reared as queens, but will be fed and tended to by the workers in the starter hive, and will therefore compete with the selected grafts for limited resources. Care must be taken to ensure that no queen bee is accidentally transferred to the starter hive. Workers will not start queen cells in the presence of another queen. The starter hive should be crowded with many young workers. These workers can all come from a single hive or from multiple hives. Nurse bees generally will not fight with those from other colonies in the spring. Begin by placing only 2 combs in the starter hive against the outside walls. Gently shake or brush bees from the combs of open brood into the space between. Carefully add the other 2 combs after the bees. The cell bar frame will be added later. Leave a gap in the centre for now. This hive should be well ventilated with screen, but all flight entrances should be closed completely. Keep the starter hive in a cool, shaded location. A wet sponge placed against the screen can assist the bees in keeping cool. Grafting larvae. Honeybees rear new queens from young larvae naturally. When a colony becomes queenless or is perceived to have a poorly performing queen, they will select larvae from among their brood and provision them. Honeybees rear new queens from young larvae naturally. When a colony becomes queenless or is perceived to have a poorly performing queen, they will select larvae from among their brood and provision them abundantly with raw jelly. Their cells will be elongated into vertical queen cells. When preparing to swarm, the queen deposit eggs in the shallow vertical queen cups, often along the bottom edge of the combs, and the bees recognize that the larvae in these vertical cells are meant to become queens and will treat them accordingly. When introducing their colony to rear queens, the beekeeper presents selected larvae to the queenless starter colony in vertical cups as well. The bees recognize this cue and will automatically begin to rear them as queens. Various techniques have been developed to select specific larvae and present them to a colony of bees to become new queens. These methods can be divided into grafting and non-grafting techniques. Grafting larvae in the standard method for producing large numbers of queens can be easily done by the hobbyist who desires to raise only a few queens at a time. When grafting, larvae are removed from the comb with a small tool and transferred to individual queen cups. Some beekeepers are intimidated by the idea of handling delicate larvae, and so many other methods have been developed to avoid this step. These techniques may involve cutting or otherwise manipulating combs in which the queen has already deposited eggs, or confining the queen in a space where she has no choice but to lay eggs in provided cups. By contrast, grafting larvae is not difficult, requires tools, and needs little preparation with minimal practice. Almost anyone can develop the skills to graft queens within a short time. This manual describes a grafting technique, sometimes called the do-little method. For alternative methods of queen rearing, the Ellie Hopkins, Miller, Genta, etc., consult other sources for specific instructions. Regardless of which method is used to initially select the larvae, the procedures for preparing starter and finisher hives are the same. Also, the timing of steps in queen rearing procedure remains the same. Grafting larvae requires very little specialised equipment. All items can be purchased from beekeeping suppliers, modified from existing beekeeping equipment, or created from scratch. Before beginning grafting, prepare the workspace by arranging all tools necessary equipment within easy reach. A grafting tool, in Figure 2, is used to pick up an individual larvae from a comb and transfer it to a queen cell cup. A variety of styles are available for purchase. Use the grafting tool that best fits your needs and your technique for handling larvae. The authors prefer the inexpensive spring-loaded Chinese grafting tool. whereas I use the German metal tool now. Queen cell cups in figure 3 on the next page, obviously. Hold the larvae in a vertical orientation in the starter hive, which encourages the worker bees to rear them into new queens. Cup made from plastic, wood or wax may be purchased. And there's figure 3. Wax cups can easily be made using a 3/8 diameter wooden dowel with a smooth rounded end. Soak the dowel in cold water and dip into melted wax several times to build a thick layer, and then twist and remove the cup off when it's cool. Different types of colours or cups can be useful to keep track of grafts reared from different breeder colonies. The queen cell cups are attached to the cell bar. Some plastic cups are designed to fit snugly into a standard grooved bottom bar, shortened to fit within the frame. Wax and wooden cells can be secured to the bar with melted wax or propolis. A cell bar frame is a standard beehive frame modified with a small wooden blocks to secure the cell bars. Each cell bar needs a minimum of 1 3/4 inch of space beneath for the bees to finish the cells and to allow the beekeeper to remove them easily. Bright lighting is important when selecting appropriate larvae. A headlamp or a desk lamp that can be easily moved and adjusted is useful for hands-free operation, but a handheld flashlight is also effective to illuminate the bottoms of the cells. Good eyesight is necessary for grafting. Some beekeepers may wish to purchase an inexpensive pair of reading glasses or other magnification aid. When the workspace is ready, select a frame of brood from the breeder queen's hive. A darker frame, black plastic foundation or older wax comb is preferable because the contrast makes the pale colour larvae easier to see. Some beekeepers can confine their laying queens on a particular comb for a day to ensure having brood of a known and uniform age. Usually, however, any frame with both eggs and open brood should contain more than a sufficient number of acceptable larvae. When removing the frame from the colony, gently brush the bees into the place the frame gently brush all the bees into the place the frame on the gently brush all the bees into the place gently brush all the bees into the hive. Do not jar the frame or otherwise shake the bees from it. This may dislodge or injure the larvae. Place the frame on a table with the top bar towards you. The cells in a comb are usually angled slightly upward so elevating the bottom bar of the frame by a few inches using a block of wood or other support will allow you to see the bottoms of the cells more easily as you work. Larvae in open brood cells are very susceptible to drying out when removed from the hive. Place a wet towel under the frame and another on top to provide humidity for the larvae while you work. Choose only larvae about the same size as an egg, curved slightly into a comma shape and lying in their jelly. See figure 5. Approaching each larvae from the back of the curve rather than the ends are the easiest way to get the tool beneath it. When picking up the bee larvae, care must be taken to scoop up the royal jelly with it. The tool should not accidentally touch the larvae at all. The flexible tip of the Chinese grafting tool slides easily down the sides of the cells and beneath the larvae. See figure 6. Pull the tool straight up. The larvae and jelly will stick to it. Place the tip of the tool against the bottom of the queen cell cup and depress the spring button on the back of the tool. The plunger will gently push the larvae and jelly into the cell as the tongue retracts. Other types of grafting tools will require slightly different techniques to transfer the larvae. Position the larvae in the center of the cell. Young larvae are naturally lying on their one side, breathing through only one set of spiracles, breathing holes. If a larva is flipped over, it may suffocate. Be sure to keep the larvae in the same orientation as it is transferred. Some beekeepers choose to prime queen cups with rolled jelly collected from other cells or with other substances. This method, called wet grafting, is both time-consuming and unnecessary. It is sufficient to transfer larvae to empty cell cups for dry grafting, with enough jelly to sustain them and keep them from drying out. The diet fed to developing queens is different than that fed to workers. As soon as the bees in the starter hive discover the larvae, they will begin to feed them appropriately. After several larvae have been transferred, lay a damp cloth or paper towel across the tops of the filled queen cells cups to keep the grafts moist. Whilst these larvae are not very sensitive to changes in temperature, they are extremely sensitive to low humidity. After all grafts have been made, insert the cell bars into the cell bar frame. If necessary, use a small bit of wax or propolis to secure the cell bars in place. Grafted larvae and jelly will naturally adhere to the insides of the cell cups, but turn the cell bar frame over gently. Do not jar the frame as it is being moved. Place the cell bar frame into the center of the starter hive for 24 to 36 hours. Finisher hives. Because they are crowded and queenless, bees in a starter hive are eager to begin raising new queens. Check figure 8. However, starter colonies are not apt to finish a large number of cells. Their resources are limited to continuing feeding many queens. If left in the starter hive, the bees will selectively feed only some of the larvae, abandoning the others. For this reason, the beekeeper must move the queen grafts to a strong hive which can finish rearing them. A finisher hive contains the resources and population to care for many developing queens at once. Finishers must be strong and cream white, and therefore will not be inclined to start new queen cells on their own. However, since the queen cells have already been started by other bees, those in the finisher hive will continue feeding them until the cells. Any healthy populous bee colony with at least 2 deep hive bodies and ample food stores can be used as a finisher hive. To prepare the hive, be sure the queen is in the lowest box and place the queen excluder above her. If not confirmed below, the laying queen will quickly find and destroy all developing queen cells in the upper hive body. Should have at least 2 frames of open brood to draw nurse bees above the excluder. This box will also have 1 empty space where the grafts will go. In the center of the hive between frames of open brood, place frames containing pollen or bee bread on the other side of these brood frames, so that the nurse bees will have ready access to more protein. These bees will need lots of pollen and honey in order to rear queens. Remove the frame of grafted queen cells from figure 9 from the starter hive after 24 to 36 hours and place it into the prepared finisher hive. Check figure 10. There is no need to shake or brush the nurse bees from the grafting frame. These bees are queenless and will not fight with the bees in the finisher hive. They will continue to assist in caring for the grafted larvae. The bees in the finisher hive will quickly recognize new queen cells and begin to provision them with ample supply of raw jelly. Once the new queen cells have been sealed, another frame of grafts can be placed into the same hive to be finished. Do not give the hive more open grafts than they can care for at once. The bees in the starter hive can be returned to the colony from which they were taken, may be added to a weak hive, or may be used to start a new hive. The beekeeper can take one of the started queen cells from the graft frame and press it gently into an empty portion of comb in the starter hive. The bees will continue to rear this single queen, which will emerge soon, mate, and begin to head a productive colony. Place the queen in a suitable location and open the flight entrance. Add another comb to the colony to replace the cell bar frame that was removed. The new comb may be empty or full or brood depending on the needs of the colony. New queen cells must be removed within a few days of the cells being sealed. At the latest, this should be done by day 14 or 10 days after grafting. See Table 1. If a new queen emerges earlier than expected into the finisher hive, she will seek out and destroy all other sealed queen cells, ruining the beekeeper's efforts. Cells can be removed directly to queenless hives, to mating nukes, or to an incubator. If placed in an incubator, cells should be kept upright and caged individually at 92 Fahrenheit with high humidity. Transfer the virgin queens to mating nukes as soon as they emerge. Mating nukes. Once queen cells are sealed, they should be transferred to mating nukes before they can emerge. The purpose of a mating nuke is to provide an environment for a virgin queen to emerge, embark on her nuptial flights, and begin laying eggs. A mating nuke is usually a very small hive with just enough bees and food to support itself. Any size hive can be used to house new queens, but small nukes are often used due to the large number of hives that are needed by queen breeders. Using small colonies also minimises losses when queens fail to return from mating. Small nuke boxes holding 3 to 5 frames work very well. Many beekeeping supplies also offer various types of mini nukes or standard hives divided into 3 or 4 smaller sections with separate entrances. It will benefit the queen producer to remain consistent in terms of equipment size, so that swapping frames and woodenware will be easier. Deep frames are recommended over medium or shallow because the bees can better regulate their temperature and can store more food. Mating nukes can be queenless. Each should contain at least one, or mating nukes must be queenless. Mating nukes must be queenless. Each should contain at least 1 or 2 frames of open brood, covered with nurse bees, and at least 1 frame of honey and pollen. If there is none stored on the brood frames, a nuke should have area of empty cells where the new queen can begin laying eggs. More bees can be shaken in, but they are not always necessary. Inspect mating nukes regularly for pests. Small, queenless colonies are particularly susceptible to wax moth and small hive beetle. After preparing mating nukes, wait at least 12 hours before introducing a new queen or queen cell. The bees in the mating nuke will better accept the care for the virgin queen if they recognize their queenless state. Mating nukes can remain queenless for up to 3 weeks at a time while new queen cells are being created. During this time, they may try to create their own queens if open brood is available. Laying workers may develop if nukes remain queenless for too long. Honeybee mating occurs outside the hive, high in the air. Virgin queens seek out areas where drones congregate. Daytime temperature must reach 69 Fahrenheit for mating flights to occur. Sufficient drones must be also available for the queen's successful mating to happen. Beekeepers may check the hive between 11 and 4 p.m. and be unable to find a queen during this first week because she is out on a nuptial flight. In this case, remain patient and check again after 6 p.m. or early the following day. If no evidence of a queen can be found for several days, introduce a new one. A small number of queens do not return from mating flights. Drones typically remain within 1.5 miles of their hive. Virgin queens fly a greater distance to seek males, minimizing chances that they will encounter brothers from their own hives. Colonies with several combs of drone foundation can be placed at a distance of 1 mile from the mating yard and in several directions from this practice, known as drone flooding, can be done to influence the mating stock available to virgin queens. The colonies used as drone sources should be desirable traits, be of known lineage, and should not be genetically related to the breeder queen. Providing good queens to neighbouring beekeepers is another way to improve genetics of nearby drone sources. Once a queen has completed her mating flights, she will soon begin to lay eggs. It may take several days to a week for her to establish a good brood pattern. Once a queen begins laying and her brood pattern is judged to be adequate, she can be removed and used to requeen a failing or queenless hive. If she is to be offered for sale to another beekeeper, she can be caged with several attendant bees for transportation. If sufficient hives are not available to house all queens, they can be banked to sustain them temporarily. Caging queens. Many types of queen cages are available, made from wood, plastic or wire mesh. Cages are used to protect queens during shipping, separate them for banking, and to introduce them into new hives. Queen candy is used to plug the opening of the cage. See figure 13. This candy serves as food for the attendant bees during shipping. It also slows the release of the queen into the new colony, protecting her while the bees accept her pheromones. Traditionally, queen cage candy has been made from sugar and honey, but because spores of American foulbrood can be transmitted in honey, it is against the law in most states to ship bees with honey in any form. Queen candy can be made by kneading together confectioner's sugar with light corn syrup until a firm consistency has been reached. It should be soft enough to shape without crumbling, but firm enough that it will hold in shape and not melt in a warm hive in the male. A mini marshmallow can be used to plug the cage temporarily, but these will soften quickly and should not be used for shipping. Some beekeepers consider that the cornstarch added to the confectioner's sugar affects honey bee health and prefer to make their own by pulverizing pure granulated sugar into a coffee blender or grinder. Banking queens. A queen bank, see figure 14, is prepared similar to a finisher hive. Strong, well fed and queen right. It also requires a queen excluder to keep the laying queen away from the cage queens. The finisher hive can also be used to bank queens as long as no open cells are present. The hive will not be able to properly care for numerous open queen cells as well as adult queens. Virgin queens can be banked in individual cages for up to 2 weeks after emerging from their cells. However, they should be introduced into nukes and allowed to mate as soon as possible. If held for more than 2 weeks, virgin queens will lose their inclination and ability to mate and will produce only unfertilized drones. Mated queens can also be held in individual cages for up to 2 weeks. When ready to ship, 3 to 4 attendant bees should be added to the cage. Choose these from among the worker clusters from the outside edge of the cage. They are already accustomed to her scent and have been participating in feeding her. Mated queens that are caged before they have had an opportunity to lay eggs often become poor quality layers when later introduced to a hive. Allowing queens to establish a good laying pattern in the mating nuke before they are caged also ensures that only high quality queens are being sold. Marking queens only after their laying pattern has been evaluated is good practice. This will assist the beekeeper in locating the queen against when it is time to cage her and establishes which queens are ready for the shipment. Use the established International Queen Marking Colour System, see Table 2, for all queens that are offered for sale. Shipping queens. Shipping queen bees through the US mail or by other common carriers can be simple and convenient, but has risks. A live queen can be killed easily if left in direct sunlight or in a hot vehicle. Communicate with your shipping representative and pickup driver if possible to ensure they are aware that they have live cargo. Discuss their handling methods and estimated travel times. Some carriers may supply you with stiff cardboard document envelopes free of charge. These are fine for shipping a small number of caged queens. For larger numbers of queens, special packaging may be necessary. Shipping containers must have adequate ventilation. Drill or punch holes in envelopes or use boxes with screen panels. Place a queen cage in an envelope so that the queen side is not against the envelope itself. Just before sealing the packaging, Wet a fingertip with clean water and rub it across the screen mesh. This simple technique of watering the queen before shipping will greatly reduce stress on the queen and workers during transit. Minimal shipping time is important. Only ship queens using overnight or 2-day service. Beware of shipping in extremely hot or cold weather. Record keeping is extremely important when breeding queen bees. The schedule for queen rearing procedures, see Table 1, is necessarily based on the development cycle of the queen and cannot be altered. The beekeeper should therefore establish clear, written records to track the steps taken and know when to expect queens to emerge. If a grafted larvae was a day older than it appeared, for instance, a queen may emerge a day earlier than expected. The particular pedigree of a queen line should be recorded as well. Note the date and original source of breeding stock, name and location of breeder, and which it was purchased, bee race, Italian, Russian, Carniolan, etc., and any other characteristics or information that is known, VHS or hygienic traits. Begin new records for all colonies that are propagated from existing stock or from feral colonies or swarms that were captured. Consider everything you know about them as you evaluate colonies as potential breeding stock. When installing queen cells or virgin queens into mating nuke, record the date of introduction and then record the date when she is found to be laying eggs. It is a good practice to mark each queen only after her laying pattern has been evaluated. I'm not going to read the cloakboard method. Not today, anyway.